Welcome back to William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. I started off in a previous video talking about the themes from Romeo and Juliet. If you're looking for those, go check out my playlist in my channel. But here we are continuing on with themes, and we'll continue on as well with motifs. So when we get into some of the themes of Romeo and Juliet, one of them is the idea of fate and the way you cannot control what is going to happen to you. So in the inevitability of fate, in Shakespeare's day, it was believed that fate was a power that was vested in the movement of the stars. Now, references to the stars would have had much significance to Elizabethan audiences. Now, from the first chorus that you get in Act 1, Scene 1 at the very beginning of the play, Romeo and Juliet are described as star-crossed lovers who take their lives. Now, this ties in with the idea of your future being predetermined. No matter what they do to avoid it, their death is going to happen. Now, this permeates throughout the entire play. There are constant references to the idea that their destiny is predestined as well. For example, I fear too early, for my mind misgives some consequence, yet hanging in the stars. He that hath the steerage of my course, direct my sail. Thou desperate pilot, now at once run on the dashing rocks thy seasick weary bark. And of course Romeo's famous line, then I defy you stars. Now both Romeo and Juliet see terrible omens relating to their lives. These are going to foreshadow their deaths at the end of the play. And their foreshadowing also helps to remind the audience that these star-crossed lovers that we learned about at the very beginning of the play are going to take their lives. With this night's revels and expire the term of a despised life closed in my breast by some vile forfeit of untimely death. Methinks I see thee now art so low, as one dead in the bottom of a tomb. Either my eyesight fails, or thou look'st pale. Well, I dreamt my lady came and found me dead, strange dream, that gives a dead man leave to think, and breathed such life with kisses on my lips that I revived. Now, this theme is also closely linked to their ideals of dreams. These omens often come in the form of dreams. The power of dreams, kind of debatable when it comes to fate, though. Now, Mercutio argues that actions born of dreams are more to do with the dreamer's personality than any powerful force. And Romeo agrees with this early in the play as he states, "Thou speak'st of nothing," as Mercutio gives us the Queen Mab speech in Act 1. There's also irony in the fact that Romeo, Juliet, and the friar take actions to escape and break free from fate, while all the time they are playing into fate's hands. When Romeo shouts, "Then I defy you, stars," and makes plans to take his own life, that's what we were told fate had for him. Similarly, the plans they make to solve their difficulties lead to their untimely deaths. Now, an interesting variant on this theme is the idea that fate is simply a force that emerges from the personalities of the characters, in the same way Mercutio argues that dreamers simply act according to what they're like and what they do. Perhaps Romeo and Juliet were just too passionate and rash, something the friar warned them about in Act 3. Lastly, we look at the theme of youth versus age. Now, the youth and passion of Romeo and Juliet contrasts with the wisdom of Friar Lawrence any time they meet up with the friar. Still, Shakespeare also presents both the young and aged with faults, the rashness of the lovers, and the ongoing feud between the parents. So when we look at who might actually be the wisest in the play, Friar Lawrence is the wise figure, as he advises Romeo, "Wisely and slow, they stumble that run fast." And in Act 3, "These violent delight have violent ends, and in their triumph die, like fire and powder, which, as they kiss, consume." Now, the end of the play sees the prince addressing both the Montagues and the Capulets. He makes them realize the folly of their actions, and the feud is then resolved. It takes the death of their children to make them realize, as the prince states, that all are punished. So let's look a little bit at the language in Romeo and Juliet. Now, Shakespeare's language is one of the elements that makes his work so magical. The play is absolutely full of metaphors, which gives the text a richness. Shakespeare also uses the poetic form of iambic pentameter, and he uses a lot of puns to help his characterizations. So, characters with status and intelligence speak in verse, while characters from the lower classes are going to speak only in prose. This is going to create a contrast between their place in the households or temperament for the audience to hear. Now, when Romeo and Juliet share a sonnet, the traditional form used for love poetry, when they first speak to each other, this highlights that shared attraction and genuine nature of the love that they are sharing together. Now, this sense of familiarity and friendship through language is also portrayed through the character's ability to engage in puns. Romeo and Mercutio exchange word puns at the beginning of Act 1, Scene 4, and at Act 2, Scene 4. They would have created humor for Elizabethan audiences, but it's perhaps lost in today's language. Now, Mercutio's character is likable because he has the wit and intelligence to mock those around him. Juliet will also show her wit and intelligence through her use of language. She manages to conceal her true feelings for Romeo from her mother while still agreeing with her. This is done through skillful writing on Shakespeare's part. She says, "Indeed, I shall never be satisfied with Romeo till I behold him dead. Is my poor heart for so a kinsman vexed." Here, because she has the pause with the word dead, depending on where you read it, with Romeo till I behold him dead, or she's stating, "Dead is my poor heart." Now, there's a contrast between the imagery used by Paris and by Romeo. Where Romeo is passionate and genuine, Paris is sincere, but a little too serious for honest romance. Now, we have some motifs in the play as well. For example, the idea of light and dark. Now, light and darkness are continually referred to throughout the play. At different times, the characters prefer one to the other. It's not as simple as saying, however, that light is good and dark is bad. Each one is going to symbolize something different to the person depending upon the situation. For example, Juliet is described by Romeo using light imagery in the balcony scene in Act 2. "Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon. The brightness of her cheek would shame those stars as daylight doth a lamp." A similar blurring of night and day occurs when the two lovers wake after their first night together in Act 3. "No, it was the nightingale and not the lark that pierced the hollow of thine ear." They debate over light, both wishing for it still to be nighttime so they could stay with one another. Now, in this case, the couple want it to be night because it offers them concealment from their crime of being together. This also relates to the theme of the individual versus society, as the darkness offers them privacy and secrecy, hiding their relationship and Romeo's presence in Verona. Now, the dual nature of light and dark is reflected in Romeo's line, "More light and light, yet more dark and dark our woes." Perhaps recurring images of light and dark also hint at the alternatives available to the couple. This then ties in with the foreshadowing events and dreams in the play. As mentioned earlier, there's many dreams mentioned in the play. Many of them are foreshadowing the deaths of Romeo and Juliet, so dreams now has become a motif. Now, the nature of dreams and their importance can be contradictory. After all, Mercutio mocks them in his Queen Mab speech as children of an idle brain. This contrasts strongly with both Romeo and Juliet, who see their dreams as real and powerful, and their dreams of death are unnerving and poignant, yet they ultimately come true. We also see Shakespeare using a lot of dramatic irony throughout the play in order to create tension. At times, Shakespeare layers the dramatic irony, making it harder and harder for Romeo and Juliet to escape their untimely deaths. Some of the most poignant moments in the play come from the knowledge that we, as the readers or the viewers, cannot share with the characters. When Romeo says in Act 5, "Beauty's ensign yet is crimson in thy lips and in thy cheeks," and death's pale flag is not advanced there, it's heartbreaking because we as the audience know Juliet is still alive. And that will do it for our themes and motifs. Thank you so much for joining me for Romeo and Juliet. Again, if you are looking for the first two themes, it's in the playlist on my channel. As always, I would like it if you could subscribe to my channel. Thanks for stopping by.